Today I'm going to help you understand what your thyroid is and how your thyroid works. So your thyroid, if you feel your neck, you're going to feel like a notch here. And right underneath that notch is your thyroid, pretty small gland. So what exactly does your thyroid do? Well, I searched the internet, I did a lot of thinking, and I saw very different opinions on how to explain the thyroid to students. So some were saying, well, it's kind of like a thermostat right here. And while that really helped in terms of explaining how if your thyroid was set too high, you'd be hot all the time and sweating and you wouldn't like the heat, it didn't explain a lot of the symptoms. For example, if your thyroid is set too high, you're going to get diarrhea and you're going to be very nervous and shaky and upset. That thermostat example really didn't explain that one. So the best example I could think of was the gas pedal of your car. So as we all know, if we want to go somewhere really fast, you're going to step on that gas pedal. Why? Because what it's going to do is it's going to cause the fuel pump in your car to move gas from the gas tank to your 500 horsepower engine. And that 500 horsepower engine is going to turn that gasoline into energy that's going to make your awesome sports car peel out of the parka. We rely on the gas pedal to control how fast we're going to turn that gasoline into energy that our car can use to move. If you put the pedal to the metal, right, you're holding it to the floor, you're going to waste a whole lot of energy to do nothing if you're stuck in traffic on I-40, waiting for everybody to finish, watching the nice police officer write a ticket to the guy in the green shirt and the red sport car for speeding. Our body does the same sort of thing with thyroxine. Most of the time, in a sense, our body is in park, right? We're not running marathons and so on. A lot of times you're doing stuff that's not very physically demanding. But in order to stay alive, our body has to be able to convert those proteins, fats, and carbs into energy that our body can use to do things like grow, allow cells to repair, our brain to think, and muscles to move. This is going to mainly happen in the mitochondria. So, in our analogy, the proteins, fats, and carbs are going to be like the gasoline, and the mitochondria is going to be like the engine, and thyroxine is going to be like the gas pedal. Now, if you're in your nice sports car parked in front of the latest and greatest traffic light, and you're in a hurry to get somewhere, you're going to rev that engine. Why? Because the second the light turns green, you're going to let off the brake pedal and take off like a shot. There's downsides to doing that. You're going to wear out your engine, you're going to run out of gas, and you're going to do a lot of wear and tear on your brakes. Well, the same thing holds true of your body if you have an overactive thyroid. If your body is ready to take off like a sprinter for the Olympics, with twitchy muscles and racing thoughts, you're going to be able to respond to things very quickly. But there's a cost to being that ready for action. Believe it or not, you're going to be worn out. Why? Because you're constantly using all your muscles to be ready for action, so they're burning up all the energy inside of your muscles. They're burning up all the energy inside of your body. So because our muscles and our cells are running out of energy, you're exhausted. And because your body is constantly running out of energy, fat and sugar, you're going to be skinny. So weight loss is going to be a very common side effect here. One of the things that happens is we try to suck energy out of our food. We're not very good at it. And so most of the energy in our food actually gets wasted in the form of heat. And so we got to get rid of this heat. Well, how do we get rid of heat? Your skin. We're going to pump more blood to the skin, and that skin is going to become redder and hotter as we try to get rid of the heat. The other way that we get rid of the heat is by sweating. They're not going to want to be near anything that's hot, and they're not going to want to do anything that makes them make more heat, like exercise. So this is called heat intolerance. Now, if I were to start running back and forth, what's going to happen? I'm going to need more oxygen because my body is working hard. And so that's going to make me out of breath. The other thing that's going on is I'm going to need more calories. And so my GI system is going to have to work harder to process all this food. And so as the food just shoots through my digestive system, it means my digestive system has less time to suck all the water out of it, which means I'm going to get diarrhea. And because your brain is really active, you might have trouble sleeping at night. You might be anxious. Oddly enough, your body thinks you need bulging eyeballs to be ready for action. Now, let's go back to our car analogy. Let's say that after waiting at the traffic light for 43 minutes, it finally turns green. And so instead of pushing the gas pedal down because you're in a hurry, you just barely touch the gas pedal. Well, what's going to happen? Instead of merrily going on your way, your car will barely move. And if you're facing a hill, it might even stop moving altogether. Why? Because your car doesn't have enough energy to conquer the hill in front of you. You might even start doing weird things, like having your wife and kids get out of the car to push it up the hill. If after driving for the last 8 hours like that, you decide to pull over and get gas, you might be amazed to discover that your gas tank's abnormally full. What on earth? I thought this thing would need 20 gallons by now. It only needs 2. Why? Because your engine isn't converting a whole lot of gasoline into energy. And so there's going to be a lot of gasoline left in that car. The same holds true of your thyroid. If your thyroid is too slow, your body's gas tank, aka your stomach, is going to be abnormally full. You might say, man, look at that. I got a belly on me. Even though I work out 5 times a day, don't eat anything but salad. Why? Because you're not converting a whole lot of energy in the form of fat into energy. And so you got all this fat left over on your body. If things get bad enough, you might not even have enough energy to stay alive. Why? Because your heart rate, respiratory rate, blood pressure, and temperature will all drop to dangerously low levels. Because your heart's not pumping enough blood to your kidneys, they're not going to be able to remove the waste from your bloodstream. And because your brain isn't working hard enough, because it doesn't have enough energy to think, you can even go into a coma. And just like having a car that didn't convert enough gasoline into energy, made you do weird things like have your kids push your car up the hill, not having enough thyroxine in the body will cause your brain to do weird things. For example, your pituitary gland, when it's trying to stimulate the thyroid to work harder, not only will it release TSH, that's normal, it will release antidiuretic hormone. And the antidiuretic hormone will cause your kidneys to hold on to too much fluid, which will cause you then to be fluid overloaded, aka edema. Now that you understand what the thyroid does, how do you diagnose whether you have hyperthyroidism, too much of a thyroxine, or too much thyroid hormone, or hypothyroidism, your little thyroxine, also known as thyroid hormone? Believe it or not, you're going to rely on the symptoms. Now there's a few problems with this approach. Number one, not everyone is going to have the typical symptoms of a fast or slow thyroid. This is going to be especially true if you're old. You get old, you got all these other problems, and so it gets more confusing as to what's going on with you. Number two, you might have to wait till things get really bad, really out of hand, before you see all these signs or symptoms, or until the signs and symptoms become obvious enough for you to know what's going on. And number three, you could have something else that presents very similar, but it's not a fast or slow thyroid. So how are you going to straighten that mess out? Well, the answer is you're going to check thyroid hormones, right? You're going to check a thyroid panel on people. So the answer is you're going to check your thyroid hormone levels to see what's going on. So you go to your nearest computer and you do some research and you find, oh my goodness, there's not just 2 thyroid hormones that you could look at. You could look at free T4, T4, TSH, T3, T3R, T2, T1, TSH, and DRH. So which one do you need? Well, really the only ones that you need are free T4 and TSH. Those other ones, you can use them if you're doing something very detailed, but we're not going to that level of detail. Great, so how do you use that? Well, pretty straightforward. If free T4 is high, you have an overactive thyroid. It's too fast, you have hyperthyroidism. If free T4 is low, you have a slow thyroid, underactive, also known as hypothyroidism. Well, wait a minute, I thought you said we need TSH as well. you've only talked about T4, so how on earth are we going to use this TSH? Let's say your T4 level is normal, but you're so tired all the time. All right, well now we can look at your TSH. And so if your TSH is low, but you're being absolutely exhausted all the time and all your signs and symptoms are pointing to a fast thyroid, we're going to diagnose you with subclinical hyperthyroidism, right? You have a problem, but it's not bad enough to say, hey, you have out and out hyperthyroidism. All right, well, what happens if your T4 is normal, but you're acting cold all the time and so on, and your symptoms are looking like you have a slow thyroid? Well, in that case, we're going to look at your TSH, and if your TSH is high, we're going to think subclinical hypothyroidism. The other reason why you're going to use the TSH is we want to know where the problem is. Is it in your brain, aka the pituitary gland, or is it your thyroid? If we look at the free T4 level, and we see that it's high, and your TSH is low, your brain's doing exactly what it should be doing. It's not telling the thyroid work, right? We don't want the thyroid working anymore. It's working too hard. And so that's primary hyperthyroidism. The problem is your thyroid. If on the other hand, your TSH is sky high and your thyroid hormone is sky high, we know the pituitary gland is the problem. Why? Because that TSH is telling the thyroid work, right? And so that's going to make the situation worse. So that's going to be secondary hyperthyroidism, right? The thyroid isn't the issue, it's the pituitary gland. Now, let's run this in the reverse situation. Let's say your T4 is low, right? You have hypothyroidism, you're slow, right? So anyways, your free T4 is low, and we look at the brain and the TSH is high. So what's happening? The brain's telling the thyroid work, but the thyroid's not listening. The thyroid is the problem. So that's primary hypothyroidism. Let's say on the other hand, your free T4 is low and your TSH is low. What's happening? Your thyroid isn't working hard enough, and your brain's saying, you're doing a good job, bud. Keep up the good work. So the brain is the issue, and so this is secondary hypothyroidism. And so the vast majority of the cases is going to be a primary thyroidism, whether it be hyper or hypo. So the thyroid is to blame. Now I know what the problem is. How am I going to fix it? Well, if my thyroid is too fast, whether it's the thyroid itself or the brain, I'm going to work on the thyroid. So I'm going to destroy part of it, either through surgery or radiation. Now, other options is you could take propylthiouracil or methimazole that stops the thyroid from producing as much thyroxine. You could take propranolol, and what that's going to do is it's going to block stress receptors. So one of the problems with an overactive thyroid is it actually stimulates the adrenal glands to produce more stress hormones. It also causes your cells in your body to increase the amount of stress receptors. And so your body's really stressed out. So propranolol is going to block those receptors so you won't feel as stressed. All this is going to take time. Usually about 6 weeks for you to feel better unless you're taking radioactive iodine. And that could take about 6 months. Why? Because it's having to kill the thyroid with the radiation, and then one of the things that will take a while is for the thyroid hormone to get out of your system. So between the two, you're looking at about 6 months to really get the full effect. Now, what happens if your thyroid's too slow? You will probably be prescribed Synthroid. And so only thing Synthroid is T4, basically. And so you're replacing the hormone that your thyroid typically doesn't make. And so you'll probably feel better in about 6 weeks. Guys, I hope this helps.